Alright, Shalom. Shalom. First and foremost, before we begin, we'd like to give all praise, all glory, all honor unto
Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakha Kodash.
Double honors unto the apostles and elders of great ministry. We surely do well. As always, I say Shalom unto the elect.
Shalom to the elect.
There's a couple of brothers here from the Isaiah Yahushai come.
Brother Maya Shala.
And the brother Isaiah. I come to bring to you another video, Lord, will it be edifying. Right. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Right, and we wanted to go into today is in the kingdom, the men of Israel are going to have multiple lives. Right? This is something that's going to happen in the kingdom, needs to happen in the kingdom for the Lord's plan to take place, and especially due to because Isaiah 4:1 is set to take place on this side and head into the kingdom, but be even more magnified within the kingdom. Right? Because the Lord intends for his men to have hundreds of wives, thousands of wives, in order to replenish the Israelite population within the earth. Right? This is one of the Lord's big plans. Right? If you read, right, the brother have a book precept there I wanted to start with. Right?
Matthew 19, verse 28.
Read
from 27. Then answered Peter and said unto him, Behold, we have forsaken all and followed thee. What shall we have therefore? And Yahushua said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel.
So Peter asked the Lord, right, we forsake everything, we leave off everything, right? And what else us with the Lord would I tell us? Put off now the weak nature.
Mortal nature, yeah?
The mortal nature, right? Because time's gonna get hard, time's gonna get difficult. Right? Peter, he was a man did that, along with the other 11 apostles that were with him, right? They were men that did that. They left off everything and went and followed the Yahushua. And Yahushua said what? You're going to get a just reward, right? He said you shall sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. What they're going to get joint heirship. What is one of the perks of joint heirship, right?
Right. Continuing, and everyone that had forsaken houses, or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands, for my name's sake, shall receive 100-fold, and shall inherit everlasting life.
Right, and two pertinent things to point out there. It says wife and children. In order for you to receive 100-fold, which I'm going to that word 100-fold. Right, 100-fold goes into 100-fold, 100 times as much. See the strong saying. Right? So 100 times as much. In order for you to have 100 children, right? You get an account in the scriptures before where a man who begot a lot of children, even close to 100, he needed multiple wives to do so. Right? Mm-hmm. So both of them things in tandem. Right? In order for you to have a lot of children as the Lord intends, right? Isaiah 60 and 20, you can get out. Psalm 60 and 22. You go to that.
Yeah,
to that. Right? Isaiah 60 and 22. In order for that to take place, you will need, right, that many wives. Right? Because one woman is not bearing 100 children. Just like that. Right? Right?
Isaiah 60 and 20. Thy son shall no more go down.
Yeah, go from 20 to 20.
Verse 22. A little one shall become 1,000.
A little one shall become 1,000. See, I wish I say 100-fold. Yeah, it says 1,000, but we know the numbers they use is just to tell you what is a lot of children you're going to have.
Going to be many.
Right, because the nation needs to be replenished quickly. That would the Lord intend. Like He's going to say it as well. God.
And a small one, a strong nation.
It's a small one. Right, a little one goes to 1,000, and a small one going to go to a nation. You know how much people in our nation? A lot of people in our nation. Right? And it's 12 nations the Lord has to replenish within the earth.
The children of Israel shall, though the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea and the stars of heaven, yet only will a remnant be saved.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. I, the Lord, Yahweh, will hasten it in his time.
Right, so the Lord is going to hasten this. Right? Back to the, if you could see the first commandment given unto mankind, be fruitful and multiply.
Can.
I was with the Lord intent, and 1 plus 1 is not multiplication. 1 by 5 is multiplication. 1
Because-
by 100 is multiplication. 1 plus 1 and then 2 children and now I pick it friend. That's Edomite mentality.
Because it's one out of two things we always had to account for. Because death does reign in the earth, right? Now, technically speaking, all are we going to be immortal if he's an Israelite? But forgetting that point for now, if we was to go with that mentality of 1 plus 1 equal 1, right? Or let me say 1 plus 1 equal 2 as the Edomites would have it, a perfect white picket fence, a man, his wife, and his son and his daughter,
Yeah,
right?
That's not a kingly mindset.
But not even the mindset, that is a recipe or a formula for death and for a nation not to exist no more.
Exactly.
Because for one, if we had to do the maths, we know it have more women in the earth than men. If you didn't know that, you could look it up. It's proven, especially if you had to think about we nation. I think the numbers is like 9-1 with the so-called Negroes.
That's how
It's
it was
7 to 1.
Yeah, that's how it was something.
Well, 7-1 spiritual number, Isaiah 4:1. 7 women shall take hold of one man, right? So imagine this. Everybody go with the Edomite mentality, the Jesus and the pastor, right? And they say, well, one wife to every one man. Like 6 other bitches gonna live and dead and never make children, one. And then 2, that one man and that one wife gonna make one child, or at most 2 if we go with Esau mentality. That is a recipe for death, because if it's 1, that means you're depleting the population by half every time you all mate, which we know that is a law. We went into that with the brother Koala recently, how in China you're only allowed to make one child.
Yeah.
Right? So you're depleting your nation population by what? By a half every year, right? And then 2, let me say make the exact number, which is let me say make the exact number 2 children. At the end of the day, think about if you're really determined to only make that number, death does come. Death reigns over every nation. So what about when the famines come and you die from starvation? What about when the Lord send diseases upon you and you die from sickness? What about when Esau come with his sword and wars come and you die from gunfire?
There's a whole generation of people.
Whole generation of people go on there, and then the rest of them just gonna keep making one child or 2. The fact that death exists and that people could literally die at any given day, even when we don't think about it, David, his son, when he committed that act with Bathsheba, he died. That son died immediately. So imagine the Lord had to bring you judgment now, Zephaniah 3:5, every morning do it his judgment come to light, and you only making 1 or 2 children. Them numbers not going to catch up with death. Death will reign and the population will deplete, and it got nobody left in the earth. That mentality, again, is the Edomite mentality. And it was given unto him to take peace from the earth, and there was given unto him a great sword that they should kill one another. That mentality is the mentality of the man who would rather everybody die, right?
Beautifully explained, and mentality of a man who's not a king.
Exactly.
Because you think about, right, a perfect man to point out and mention in King David.
Yeah.
Right, the Lord said he would build up the tabernacle of David as in times past.
Right, rebuild, yeah.
Rebuild the tabernacle of David. Think about when David was in rulership, right? Edens was subjected, right? Israel was, at rest from the enemies. He instituted a 40 years arrest for Solomon to come, but then think about his interpersonal relationship. We go to 2 Samuel, the 5th chapter, where the Lord say about David. Because one thing we had to prove, right, there's common misconception that I just sin. It's not a sin. You're going to prove that David had multiple wives and concubines as well, and then prove it's not a sin. 2 Samuel.
Yeah, go ahead.
Or you can. 2 Samuel 5 from where myself.
No, you could start from 1. I just because what it does say, it does give you some of his wives, it gives some of his sons, but I literally, that was a question I actually asked, and I think I did a video similar to this as well already in the truth, and I would have literally asked the question, how much wives David had. If it was in that video, I'd do just some research or study, I was doing what lead me to going down asking that question. I think I was going into the names of David's sons and what they mean and whatever, and then I went into it. And through Google, I find out that David had 8 wives, right?
Okay.
And we know Solomon beat that by the hundreds,
God.
So right, so you
8
can,
wives David had.
yeah.
When
But
I read,
I could get to you when we're done, yeah.
there's 2 Samuel 5.
You can read from one.
From 1, but I learned to read and only read.
Oh well, then let me see. Is it from 5?
5.
Uh,
I think it better go down from 10.
let's see.
Because, 10. Because the point there, the Lord was with him, and look what the Lord allowed.
Right, is that precept self out of so like
Okay. 2 Samuel 5 and from 10. It says, and David went on and grew great, and the Lord Yahweh Shem Yeshua host was with him.
yeah.
You kept make mention the Lord preserved David wheresoever he went.
Yeah.
So we know David was a man. Scripture even make mention of David was a man after the Most High mind, after the Most High heart. Right? David was a man of the Lord, third in command in the kingdom. Underneath Yahweh Shai, third in command in the kingdom is David. Right? Look what the Lord allowed David to have. And Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messengers to David and cedar trees and carpenters and masons, and they built David an house. And David perceived that the Lord had established him king over Israel, and that he had exalted his kingdom for his people Israel's sake. Right? And David took him more concubines and wives out of Jerusalem after he was come from Hebron. And there were yet sons and daughters born to David. And these be the names of those that were born unto him in Jerusalem: Shammua, and Shobab, and Nathan, and Solomon, Ibhar, also Elishua, and Napheg, and Japhia, and Eli Shammah, and Eliada, and Eli Phalet. Right? So you see, the Lord allowed David to go and had more concubines, right? And how we know this was not punishable? This was in a sin. Right? And they go to 2 Samuel 8 chapter.
Or I would have given the even more.
Not 8. 2 Samuel
I think it's 12.
12.
Yeah.
Second Samuel 12 from verse 7. It says, and Nathan said to David, thou art the man that said the Lord Yahweh Shem Yoshai, power of Israel. I anointed thee king over Israel, and I delivered thee out of the hand of Saul. There's the word of the Lord coming to David via Nathan. Here the Lord had to say concerning David. And I gave thee thy master's house and thy master's wives into thy bosom, and I gave thee the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And if that had been too little, I would moreover have given unto thee such and such things. So if the wives he had was too little, the Lord would have given him more. The Lord would have given him more. Wherefore, as thou despite the commandment of the Lord to do an evil thing in his sight, thou hast killed Uriah the Hittite with the sword, and taken his wife to be thy wife, and hast slain him with the sword of the children of Ammon. So this was the problem. The problem was in the fact that David had another wife or multiple women. The problem was the fact that he took another man's wife. How we know that? We can confirm that with scripture. 1 Kings, the 15th chapter. And the 5th verse, David sins number. They often hear, Eliashua say David sins are written or recorded. Right? This is the record that David sins here. Right? He committed another sin number in the children of Israel, but that wasn't imputed unto him. He wrote a psalm saying that as well, blessed be the man whom the Lord had not imputed iniquity unto. Just roughly paraphrasing, right? But Daisy sins, David sins recorded, look at here, 1 Kings 15 from 4. It says, nevertheless, for David's sake did the Lord Yahweh Shem Yoshai his power give him a lamb in Jerusalem to set up his son after him and to establish Jerusalem. Because David did that which was right in the eyes of the Lord, and turned not aside from anything that he commanded him all the days of his life, save only the matter of Uriah the Hittite. What was the matter of Uriah the Hittite? He committed adultery and he killed Uriah. Or murder, let me say that he murdered Uriah. Right? So the problem with the situation with Uriah is that he murdered him and he committed adultery, which is right. That is the problem, not the fact that David had more than one wife. That is not a problem. Because if you go back to it now, 2 Samuel, to prove David had more than one wife, and the Lord punished him for that. But what about this? Is it when he fled from Absalom?
Absalom.
He said, So like, let me just look it up. The concubines.
Or when Absalom took his concubines?
Yeah, no, not that exactly, but he left concubines. I think it mentions how many? 10 women. Second Samuel, the 15th chapter from the 16th verse. It says, and the king went forth, and all his household after him, and the king left 10 women which were concubines to keep the house. Why didn't the Lord punish him for having these 10 concubines? Because it's not a sin to have 10 concubines. It's not a sin to multiply women unto yourself. The Lord even said that in the law, when you get a king over you, you will multiply wives unto himself. But the problem would be what? If those wives turn your mind away from serving the Lord, which you're going to touch that topic as well. Right? You got anything?
Yeah. I asked a question here. How many wives did David have? The Bible explicitly names 8 wives of King David: Michal, Ahinoam, Abigail, Maacah, Haggith, Abital, Eglah, and Bathsheba.
Abigail was Nabal's wife.
Nabal's wife, yeah. While these 8 are specifically named, 2 Samuel 5:13 indicates he took more wives and concubines in Jerusalem, suggesting a larger unlisted household.
So David probably had more.
And we know it could be unlisted as well. When you read about David, one of the sons born unto David, Chileab of Abigail, they ain't had no account of he or he do. So not just because these things were not written mean nothing happened. David had more wives, he had more sons.
Even Solomon, he had 1,000 wives, so we know the names of all of them.
No.
We know the daughter of Pharaoh. We know the woman they wanted to give to King David, but King David never went in onto her, so that woman became Solomon's wife. Right? We know of 2. I think it had more, and we know of those 2, but he had 1,000. Were all of them recorded? Just because they weren't recorded doesn't mean he didn't have them. No, he did. Right?
Right. Named wives of King David: Michal, Saul's daughter, David's first wife; Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, mother of Amnon, David's firstborn; Abigail, widow of Nabal the Carmelite, mother of Chileab; Maacah, daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur, mother of Absalom and Tamar; Haggith, mother of Adonijah; Abital, mother of Shephatiah; Eglah, mother of Ithraim.
So like, and
If
even
we
when
am, so like that.
listen them names. When we read 2 Samuel 5 and 13, I didn't think all them names here.
Exactly.
Yeah, my name Chef. Say it again.
Shephatiah.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that here.
You seen this one here.
I'm not seeing.
Shammua, you not seen Shammua, mother.
Yeah, I'm not seeing Adonijah, Absalom.
Now you seen Adonijah and you seen
No,
Absalom.
I'm not seeing it here.
Oh, right.
From 2 Samuel 5 from 14, they're not showing you all the sons he had at this point in time. He got more.
Right.
So he had more wives. Come on.
Right. Eglah, mother of Ithraim, Bathsheba, former wife of Uriah the Hittite, mother of Solomon. David married the first 6 mentioned above during his 7.5-year reign in Hebron, with Bathsheba marrying him later in Jerusalem. Scripture also mentions he had concubines, 2 Samuel 15:16 and 2 Samuel 16:21-23 for reference.
You see the 21 to 23. Right, there's when Absalom went in unto the concubines. Right? So you see, David had multiple wives. The problem wasn't him having multiple wives. The problem was him going on to
Uriah's wife.
Uriah's wife. Then we touch from the perspective of those outside of that problem with having multiple wives. They probably turning your heart away from the Lord. I'd say happened with Solomon. Right?
Deuteronomy 17:17.
Book of Deuteronomy chapter 17.
Let me see.
That will context and see.
You read from verse 14.
Deuteronomy 17 from verse 14. It says, when thou art come into the land which the Lord Yahweh Shem shall thy power give it thee, and shalt possess it, and shall dwell therein, and shall say, I will set a king over me, like as all the other nations that are about me.
Right, so they are prophecy here because we even know the nation as well set to our kings. Genesis 49:10, when the land shall be deserted of both her kings, right? So go ahead.
Genesis
49, the prophecy of Shiloh.
right? Continuing, thou shalt in any wise set him king over thee, whom the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai shall choose. One from among thy brethren shalt thou set over thee. Thou mayest not set a stranger over thee, which is not thy brother. Right, so no other man who not of the nation of Israel is supposed to rule over Israel. Right, so what's going on with Herod and them was, against the law.
Right.
Verse 16, but he shall not multiply horses to himself, nor cause the people to return to Egypt, to the end that he should multiply horses. For as much as the Lord Yahweh Shem said unto you, you shall henceforth return no more that way. Neither shall he multiply wives to himself, that his heart turn not away, neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver or gold. So AK, you're not supposed to be greedy upon anything that the Lord had blessed them with, right? And to point out to the wives, he could multiply wives to himself, but what? The problem would be what? That they turn his heart away from the Lord. So if you could handle having 10 wives, 15 wives as a king, and then not turning your heart away from the Lord, there's nothing wrong with you having those wives. David gave us a perfect example of that. And David danced.
Even I one day fair to it make mention because we also think it's not necessarily wives turning heart away neither, no. It's the concubines, the heathens.
Mm-hmm.
Because we say daughters, we see daughters, sons, daughters.
We saw that happen as well with, in the time of Nehemiah. The men that didn't know the Hebrew language, nor did the children know the Hebrew language because there was only, mixing and mingling with those heathen nation women, and he started to beat them up.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's another thing, when you get a wife of the other nations, for one, she's not a wife, because a wife implies being in covenant with them. You're not in covenant with these other nations. She becomes a concubine. Right? She's just a lesser wife, right? But you supposed to bring she underneath your order to serve your king, your power. You're not supposed to inquire how she was serving in Sheila, because I would turn you right away from the Lord. That's what happened with Solomon. That's specifically mentioned in 1 Kings 11 and 15. 1 Kings 11 from 1.
Okay.
Because he said, and Solomon loved what? Many strange women.
Right. Yeah, it's like something.
I'm just.
Over the David not being turned away from the Lord with
They were dancing because they put them on that order.
Right.
It's 2 Samuel 6 from 14. And David danced before the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai with all his might. And David was girded with a linen ephod. So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai with shouting and with the sound of the trumpet. And as the ark of the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai came into the city of David, Michal, Saul's daughter, looked through a window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai. And she despised him in her heart. Let me see what let me show you the king how you're supposed to deal with these bitches. Alright? And they brought in the ark of the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai and set it in its place in the midst of the tabernacle that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And as soon as David had made an end of offering burnt offerings and peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahushai of hosts. And he dealt among the people, even among the whole multitude of Israel, as well to the woman as men, to everyone a cake of bread and a good piece of flesh and a flagon of wine. So all the people departed, everyone into his house. Then David returned to bless his household. And Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet David and said, how glorious was the king of Israel today, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the vain fellows shamelessly uncovered himself. And David said unto him, right? And David said, Salat.
We're going to get on a translation, see me? Yeah.
This part. Salat. And David said, wow, this is always do that to me. Salat, yeah. Just getting into the GNT. Um, right. Right. I have it in the GNT. I'm gonna get it in the GNT. Second Samuel 6 from 20. From 20. There's it in the GNT. Afterward, when David went home to greet his family, Michal came out to meet him. The king of Israel made a big name for himself today, she said. He exposed himself like a fool in the sight of the servant women of his officials. David answered, I was dancing to honor the Lord, who chose me instead of your father and his family to make me the leader of his people Israel. And I will go on dancing to honor the Lord Yahweh Shem Yoshai, and will disgrace myself even more. You may think I am nothing, but those women will think highly of me. Michal, Saul's daughter, never had any children. Right, you see? Right? And David said unto Michal, it was before the Lord Yahweh Shem Yoshai, we did it in the KJV, which chose me before thy father and before all his host to appoint me ruler over the people of the Lord Yahweh Shem Yoshai over Israel. Therefore I will play before the Lord Yahweh Shem Yoshai, and I will yet be more vile than thus, and will be base in my own sight of the maid, and will be base in mine own sight, and of the maidservants which thou hast spoken of them shall I be had in honor. Therefore, Michal, the daughter of Saul, had no child until the day of her death. Right? So when she tried to, fuck David up, or sit down and say, you should not be dancing, right, because you're looking like that fool. David said, no, fuck you, I dancing to the Lord. I dancing to honor the Lord. David pushed you in she place, and the Lord punished you for opening she mouth against the king, especially in honor of the Lord. Solomon didn't do that. That is the problem. Solomon didn't do that. David checked that bitch. But Solomon didn't check them bitches, and then he was doing the idol worship in the Lord. If Solomon was supposed to do as the Lord said, rather bring it up. Let's see if I get it here. Exodus 34. So, Exodus 34, reading from verse 13. It says, but ye shall destroy their altars, break their images, and cut down their groves. For thou shalt worship no other power, for the Lord Yahweh Shem Yoshai, whose name is jealous, is a jealous power. Lest thou make a covenant to the inhabitants of the land, and they go a halfing after, and they go a whoring after their gods, and do sacrifice unto their gods, and one call thee, and thou eat of his sacrifice, and thou take up their daughters unto thy sons, and their daughters go a whoring after their gods, and make thy sons to go a whoring after their gods. Right? There's also one which says shave head. Deuteronomy 21 and from verse 11. Right? This is what you're supposed to do with the captives of the other nation. All these other women are these other nations. This is what you're supposed to do unto them. I'm supposed to come and put underneath the order of Yahweh Shem Yoshai. Right? From verse 10. Deuteronomy 21 from 10. When thou goest forth to war against thine enemies, and Yahweh thy power had delivered them into thine hands, and thou hast taken them captive. So you see the context in which again these women, after you war their nations, and they have become captives unto you. Right? And seest among the captives a beautiful woman, and has a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to thy wife, then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails. Right? And she shall put the raiment of her captivity from off her, and shall remain in thine house, and bewail her father and her mother a full month. And after that thou shalt go in unto her, and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife. Right, so that's the context. You come and he takes you out of captivity to be your wife underneath your order. Right? She's not supposed to come and sing in your ears like Delilah did with Samson, like those bitches did with Solomon. Like those other bitches did with the Israelites anytime I Nehemiah. No, they're not supposed to come in your ears and sing bullshit in your ears. Right? To turn your heart away from your Bashim Shai. I know this is go.
Right.
Right? So that established.
You read the one in Deuteronomy 17? With the king.
Yeah.
You read already, and then you read the 34.
Right. So now, with that in mind, I go into Gemini to ask Gemini a question. Question.
And you read with Solomon as well, how he wanted, they turned his heart away.
You can't select. You
Right,
go there
because-
first,
yeah.
and then you go back to the
Gemini.
Right. This is
1 Kings 11, I believe.
1 Kings 11 from 1.
Yep. 1 Kings 11 from verse 1. But King Solomon loved many strange women together with the daughter of Pharaoh, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Zidonians, and the Hittites. Of the nations concerning which Yahweh said unto the children of Israel, ye shall not go in to them, neither shall they come in unto you. For surely they will turn away your heart after their gods, their idols.
So you see the context in which he says stay away from. Right, because you see a colon there. That colon, right, that is stop a statement which was just made and introduce another statement which is going to be made which ties to the first statement. Right, so after the comma, he said, you shall not go in unto them, neither shall they come in unto you. For, right, so this ties to what you just said, for surely they will turn away your heart after their powers. So that is the problem. See them turning your heart away from serving Yahweh Shem Shai. Right, which David did stand 10 toes down. Right, later down in this chapter, it literally says that David stood 10 toes down. Right, if you read from 12 verse to 13 verse. Right, but Solomon didn't. Continue.
If you could get as well in the Apocrypha, who thou didst bow thy loins to women.
I'll see if I.
Yeah.
Right.
Solomon clave unto these and loved these women. And he had 700 wives, so we know this had to be Israelites, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned away his heart. For it came to pass when Solomon was old that his wives turned away his heart after other idols, and his heart was not perfect with Yahweh, as was the heart of David his father.
Right.
For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians, and after Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. And Solomon did evil in the sight of Yahweh, and went not fully after Yahweh, as did David his father. And Solomon built an high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon. And likewise did he for all his strange wives, which burnt incense and sacrificed unto their idols. And Yahweh was angry with Solomon, because his heart was turned from Yahweh, power of Israel, which had appeared unto him twice.
Right, so you see Solomon fuck up. Confirmation here in Ecclesiastes 47 from 18.
Right, again, this you read in here an historical account of the nation of Israel, right?
Right, and he made mention of Solomon here in verse 30. So you continuing on, right? He's speaking about Solomon. Here's what he said concerning Solomon in verse 19. It says, thou didst bow thy loins unto woman, and by thy body thou was brought into subjection. Thou didst stain thy honor and pollute thy seed, which we know that, just to back this quick, stain your honor. Ecclesiastes 10 and 1, it says, dead flies cause the ointment of the apothecary to send forth a stinking savour, so that a little folly him that is in reputation for wisdom and honor. So if you in reputation for wisdom and honor and then catch you in folly, they're going to stain your glory. They're going to stain the reputation.
Your
renown. Right? They knew you for being a wise man and they catch you in folly. That's what took place with Solomon. Right? Continuing, Ecclesiastes 47 back at verse 19. Verse 20, he said, thou didst stain thy honor and pollute thy seed, so that thou broughtest wrath upon thy children and was grieved for thy folly. So the kingdom was divided, and out of Ephraim ruled a rebellious king. right? So now, having all of this established, that's something,
Nah, it's
right? Having all of this established, right? Ask Gemini a question,
right.
right? Says, oh, I made a statement to Gemini to see what they would say, right? Because this going to happen in the kingdom. Could whole Isaiah 4 and 1 in the meantime, right? It says, kings often multiplied wives and concubines to themselves in the Bible, right? It says the practice of kings maintaining multiple wives and concubines was a significant feature of ancient Near Eastern royalty, which had come from who? From the Israelites, right? We set the standard for royalty in the East. Abraham said even the Ishmaelites who practicing some level of royalty in the earth today having multiple wives. You learn that from Abraham, right? Though it often created a tension between cultural norms and the theological standard presented in biblical text. No, it didn't. Right, so Gemini fucking up here. Because the cultural norms was the standard. Right? This was a norm back then for a man to have multiple wives. Jacob. Even a man that wasn't even in such a high esteem as a king, you could get that in
Yes, I'm
yeah,
trying to remember the one we was reading about the multiple wives, um, daughters, sons, like Exodus 34. Yes, because it make mention there, as they say that, right?
16.
Right after their gods, thou shall make the no, the one who had to shave their head more on the mother and father. Shave head, mother.
Jeremy 21 from 10.
21, just give me a second here. I just want to make a point here. And, right, so that, and then just go to now, is it Leviticus 18 with the laws on sexual immorality. Right. So yeah, go ahead. Because you're talking about normal men having multiple wives, right?
I was going to point an example. Samuel's father. First Samuel.
Penina and Hannah.
Hannah.
Yep.
Like Samuel's father had multiple wives. Once you were able to take care of your wives, you could have had multiple. Exodus 21 even from verse 10, right? You could have multiple wives, just be able to take care of all of them, right? So going ahead, it says, and the theological standards presented in the Bible. No, this doesn't go against the theological standard presented in the Bible. The Hawashai came and that we open up with Matthew the 19th chapter from the 27th. He told you we're going to have more, right? More than one wife, by 100-fold. So going on, it says cultural and political motivation. It says in the ancient world, a large harem was really just about personal desire, that it was a primary tool of statecraft. Political alliances, marriages were treaties of the ancient world by marrying the daughter of a neighboring king. A monarch secured a non-aggression pact and established a familial bond between the two nations, which this didn't happen with Israel. We didn't make no covenants with these men, but we wouldn't war against you. For instance, Solomon, when he married Pharaoh's daughter, Egypt and Israel wasn't in war because of that. Right? They ceased the war between them. See that take place with Joseph as well when he married Pharaoh's daughter when he was held captive and released from captivity. Right? Going on, it says demonstration of wealth. Maintaining a large household required immense resources, which is beautiful because you have to understand this is a standard that is going to be maintained within the kingdom. You read 1 Kings, the 4th chapter, you look at how much provision Solomon had to maintain such a large household, right? That was of utmost importance, and that you're going to have that, Yahushua said it, he that forsake all of these things, they shall have it by the hundred. For everything in the earth is about to become yours. Why would you not have multiple wives? You're going to have everything you need to take care of them. This was a practice conducted by kings because they had the means to do so. Even not just Israelite kings, heathen kings as well, Artaxerxes and Esther. He went throughout his province to get the most beautiful woman and he took care of all of them. Right? But he just chose Esther to be the first queen, right? The one he would show off. But everybody else, you think he didn't go with all of them? Come on, you take the most beautiful woman out of the kingdom to just say, all right, well, I don't want you here. No, Artaxerxes had all of those women.
How many wives did King Xerxes have in the Bible? In the Bible specifically, yeah. In the Bible specifically, the book of Esther, King Xerxes Ahasuerus is where you would know him as when reading the book, is portrayed as having two primary queens, Vashti and then Esther, while he held a beauty contest to find a new queen and maintain a vast harem of concubines.
He maintained a vast harem of concubines.
Only Vashti and Esther are named as his wives.
Right.
Yep, so
Again, read. Right.
yeah, other wives, concubines, while secular history mentions other potential wives.
Secular history lets you know he had other wives.
Yeah.
Right.
The biblical narrative focuses on Vashti and Esther.
Right, because Esther took over from Vashti and Esther was an Israelite. So the reason the biblical narrative focused on Esther because that's something to do with Israel. Because we're not going to go into the lineage of all these other nations. We don't care. You know, the Bible is about Jacob and Esau. That's the story. Right? These men, they got mentioned because they had their time to rule, but no, we're not going to go into he whole person. Right? Fuck he. But we just mentioned he there. Why? Because he had something to do with Israel at that part in time. Right? So continuing on here, it's a demonstration of wealth. Maintaining a large household required immense resources. A vast number of wives and concubines served as a visible status symbol. Right? Signaling that the king had the financial power to provide for hundreds of dependents, and that's going to happen in the kingdom. Right? It's going to be a vast status symbol. Right? Even the other nations, even the other heathen women, you read Jeremiah the 49th chapter and 11th verse.
I was thinking about that. The woman shall not lament.
But that one is Job, but the one with Jeremiah. You could go to Jeremiah 49, so he had one. It said, let thy widows trust in me.
Yep, let thy widow, yeah. Jeremiah 49:11, thy fatherless children I will preserve them alive, and let thy widows trust in me.
So he widows gonna come running to Jacob. Why? Because Jacob gonna be the topic of the tongue forever. Right? Demonstration of continuing. Dynastic stability. It says high infant mortality rates meant that having many children.
Exactly the earlier point I was making. If people dying quicker than they're being born, would it make sense that half your population every time you get together with somebody? That not making no sense.
It's not making sense to the Lord as well. The Lord say fruitful
and multiply.
The Lord want people here. The Lord will say the Lord had created the earth to be inhabited.
Yeah.
Right? It says high infant mortality rates meant that having many children, especially sons, was seen as a way to ensure the continuation of the royal line and the stability of the throne. We're going to make sure the royal line is continued in here. Every J going to be great. Right? And that has to be maintained, so we have to have more Jakes. Come on. That's just how it is.
Thy children shall be as the sand of the sea and the stars of heaven, which can be measured, no numbered. Being that is the case for the Lord to fulfill that promise to Abraham, ultimately being that promise is going to ultimately be fulfilled in the kingdom. That is real children.
Think about it. Abraham even had multiple wives and he didn't do it.
Gideon had 70 sons or 70 children. We got of him for he had many wives. Judges 8:30. I had it on the screen there.
Right.
So
how could that be done with one wife, one that no work with the Lord? Come on, the Lord, the kings of Israel not intended to deal with just one. The Lord made Abraham because think about it. If he knew the continuation of the nation would be through Isaac, the Lord said unto Abraham, thy seed shall be as the sand of the sea and as the stars of heaven. Well, that one child was it? No, come on.
Child wasn't fulfilled.
Jacob, think about when Jacob had to establish the nation. What did he do? He got more than one wife.
It's four women he used to make the nation.
Come on.
Yeah.
Going on, it says the biblical perspective. While the text record these actions and didn't punish them, we saw in which the cases in which they were punished for and needed reprimanding for. Abraham didn't need reprimanding. When Abraham turned from his fucking and started following the Lord didn't reprimand him after fathering multiple wives. That wasn't a problem. David was not reprimanded for having multiple wives. He was reprimanded for adultery and murder. Solomon was reprimanded not for having multiple wives, but because they turned his heart away. Right? They were intrinsically or narrowed down to be reprimanded for having multiple wives. No, why was not Gideon reprimanded? Why was not Jacob reprimanded? Abraham reprimanded? These are questions they need answers for. So what the Lord just passed, he just let judgment slide, no? If the Lord didn't let judgment side with his son, and then with the second and third in command in the kingdom, he let judgment side with them, will let judgment side with anybody else. Come on. Going on, it says the law of the king in the book of Deuteronomy, which we just read that and break it down, so I'm going to read it here.
Case of Solomon, we
just read that, we're going to break it down here.
Difference between a wife and a concubine,
It
we
says-
went through all of that. Well, in fact, you could read
Let
that.
me just
yeah.
read it here. It's a difference between wife and concubine. While both are part of the royal household, their legal status differ. Right? They didn't have, because we didn't enter into a covenant with the heathens. Right? It says wives usually had higher social standing, often coming from other noble or royal families. No, not necessarily. Right? The children were generally first in line for inheritance and the throne. Not necessarily. Concubines often had a lower legal status, while they were secondary wives and their children were recognized. They did not carry that same political weight or dowry, that bullshit, because he's the son of your father. I can't remember which king, one of the kings descended from a concubine. I believe it's Rehoboam.
Yeah, so,
Rehoboam's son who ruled the throne after, I said Rehoboam's son, Solomon's son who ruled the throne after him was descended from a concubine. I could actually, let me just fact check that. Was Rehoboam's mother a concubine? Just because you came from a concubine doesn't diminish your rights, because it's the seed of your father. No.
Ammonite, right? So, yeah, concubine, heathen wife.
Yes, no. Oh, well, no, right. So let me clear this up. A concubine in the scriptures is defined, right, according to biblical narrative, as a heathen wife. Right? Doesn't mean Solomon, just because Solomon recognized her as his wife, right? No. Any heathen nation woman is recognized as a concubine because we were not instructed to join covenant with them. Yes, we could have got together with them, but being in covenant with them, no, a marriage entails a covenant. You could only be in covenant with them of your own nation.
And again, being called wife because it's a servant wife. Anybody you have sex with is your wife.
Right. So what they're trying to say is a dynastic legitimacy for Rehoboam to inherit the throne of Israel. His mother needed to be a woman of recognized noble status. This is false. His father needed to be Solomon. That's what needed to take place there. If his father was of a different nation and his mother was that same woman, ask me if he would be of the because he just said that.
In the law, you cannot have a heathen to rule over the nation. Right?
Exactly.
You cannot take a heathen to be a king.
But
You need to be a man of your own word they use kin or brethren, one of thy brethren. So what's somebody you related to by blood. And you could only be related to Israelites by blood if your father is an Israelite. Again, Numbers 1, according to the house of the fathers.
Numbers
Yeah.
1 and 18.
Yeah.
They declared the pedigree after the house of their
fathers,
fathers.
right.
So let me just look up this way. Any of the kings of Israel murdered mothers concubines, which yes, she's an Ammonite, so yes, she was a concubine. Because Gemini doesn't know. Yes, no. He's in Judges. Yes, Abimelech, his mother, I believe, was a concubine. Yes, no. Anyway, right, Gemini fucking up there. But you need to understand the difference or what makes a woman a concubine is if she's from a hidden nation. That's it. Doesn't matter how the marriage was arranged. Doesn't matter what the reason the marriage was for. No, she is considered a concubine, right? So continuing on, it says historical impact. The multiplication of wives frequently led to succession crises.
No, it shouldn't.
It should be who the king selected.
No.
If there was a
ultimately through the
problem,
Lord, right?
David selected Solomon. Come on.
Yeah, because what David's sons did try to fight Solomon for the throne, and this one Adonijah, but what David said that Solomon should be king. Ultimately, because the Lord tell David that Solomon would be king.
Or here sometimes what happens as well, it just goes to the oldest son. Or sometimes the priest would select who needs to be king. As what happened with Samuel and Saul. Samuel selected Saul, but then Samuel came and changed his mind and selected who? David.
And I even just changed his mind because ultimately it was through the Lord, because what the Lord, Samuel tell Saul that the Most High rent the kingdom from thine hand, because what 1 Samuel 15 is that the sin of witchcraft, rebellion and stubbornness is the sin of witchcraft and idolatry, right? So because Solomon did not hearken unto the word of the Lord, ultimately the man who the Lord wanted to be king was not Solomon in the first place. Was not Saul in the first place, as in Solomon, Saul. So what the Lord just played it off that way. But what? Who had to tell Saul that he was not really the one supposed to be king? David. Samuel told Saul that David was supposed to be king. Even one of Saul's right-hand men, the captain of Saul's army, Abner even recognized that David was supposed to be king. He told David that why he entered into a pact or a league with him, that Abner promised David that he would help make him king. And then Joab and they would have went and killed him and whatever. But the point is, you would know who the king of the nation is if it had a problem like that, right? The Lord would have sorted that out eventually. So the multiplication of wives is not a problem in terms of determining who the king is. That what the priests there for, that what prophets there for.
Ultimately, you ever see the only time you ever notice a story of problem to attain rulership was that situation with in Judges with Abimelech, and he was just a wicked nigga. And then the situation with Solomon and David, and what David just end that whole beef and say Solomon is the man. So to think this is not Edomite's birth. And your British Empire and Spanish Empire and French Empire and blood feud and kill this one and kill. No, just use the king, thou art the king, and the king not there to select the priest surely will. Going on, whether they make the right choice or not doesn't matter, they're gonna make a choice. So there is no blood feud. Going on, it says the multiplication of wives frequently led to succession crises with many sons from different mothers, which the mothers have no say in this, it's the father. The question of who would inherit the throne often resulted in palace intrigue, rivalries, even civil war, as seen in the later years of King David's reign.
Which the civil war that went down had nothing to do with no multiple wives or nothing.
His son wanted to oust him, that's it.
Yeah, and it's because he tripped off because his next son raped his sister.
So that
had nothing to do with wives and all that kind of heights. It had blood feuds, yeah. The story was real interesting, yeah, but it had nothing to do with multiple wives. Don't try to attribute that to that. They're two different things, right?
So that's it, right? So
yeah, because just to say, again, I make mention with Gideon, but normal men, everyday men, were allowed or allotted to have multiple wives, as saith the law. Now we know Isaiah 4:1, we'll close with that, right? But there's Deuteronomy 21:15, because if it's an unrighteous thing to have multiple wives, why are there laws surrounding what a man should do if he does have multiple wives? Doesn't make any sense, right? Deuteronomy 21:15. If a man have two wives, one beloved and the other hated, again, Samuel, mother and father, the old Penina, Hannah situation, and they have borne him children, both the beloved and the hated, if the firstborn son be hers that was hated, then it shall be when he maketh his sons to inherit that which he had, that he may not make the son of the beloved firstborn before the son of the hated, which is indeed the firstborn. So you can acknowledge this one to be the firstborn over the next, just because the firstborn was of the wife you didn't really love the most, right?
Because you see that take place with Jacob, Rachel, and Leah. He did love Rachel more than Leah, but ultimately, who did he?
You get the play. Judah,
Judah
who came
was
of
from-
Leah, who
yeah.
came of Leah. He
And
was
if it
Leah's
wasn't
fourth
Judah,
son.
If it wasn't Judah, the first one was who?
Reuben or Simeon or Levi.
Yeah,
If
so-
we really had to think about it, the men who had the rights to be the head tribe really come from Leah.
Yeah, so come on.
Yep, yep.
Then it's shot by
But he shall acknowledge the son of the hated for the firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he had. For he is the beginning of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his.
right. So we're gonna close it Isaiah 4.
That's not one more day.
So, like,
Yeah. Do Leviticus, I believe it make mention of you shouldn't have, if you're having two wives, you shouldn't have two wives with their sisters.
18.
Leviticus 18 verse 18, neither shalt thou take a wife to her sister to vex her, to uncover her nakedness beside the other in her lifetime. Reading this in the you see, compare, looking for the easy English. Right? Do not take your wife's sister for a second wife. Do not have sex with your wife's sister if your wife is alive. So while she's still alive, you're not allowed to go into a woman and then find her sister and go into her. So if you're reading this and you're reading between the lines and you're reading the context, you have to understand, well, why are there laws governing how to have multiple wives and what you're allotted to do and what you're not allotted to do while having multiple wives if having multiple wives is a sin? Doesn't make any sense, but go ahead.
You see, that was the problem John the Baptist had with Herod as well. Salak. That's not the problem. Salak, yeah. My apologies. The problem John the Baptist had with Herod is Herod fucked his brother wife. My apologies.
Yeah.
My mindset. But anyway, close it Isaiah 4 and 1 is and that day, which this gonna begin, when Jacob's trouble is heated. It's also beginning in small increments, I know, but when Jacob's trouble becomes heated, and then going into the kingdom, this is going to be magnified as you all going to be kings. Right? This is what the Lord intends. That day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. Right? So in Jacob's trouble, they'll be having food for themselves and clothes for themselves, but in the kingdom, we're going to have to take care of that. But you understand it. Is 7 women, which is 7 represents what completion. We're going to have a complete amount of women heading into these last days, and then in the kingdom, they're going to be multiplied. Right? That's what the Lord did intend for his men, as we all going to be kings. Lord will be a part of that, 144,000 to get the first, blessed is he that had part in the first resurrection.
Right.
But, Lord will, this video was edifying, and that you all were edified. In closing, you have to say,
Kalala Yamla Yahawa, Ba'asham Yahushai, Ba'asham Racha Kodash.
double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and surely do we well. As always, I say shalom unto the elect.
Shalom to the elect.
This is a couple of brothers and the heralds of Yahweh Shaikan,
Brother Maya Shala.
and the brother Isaiah saying,
Shalom.
Shalom. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven
is at hand.